Now that we're done arguing whether or not you fell asleep.
Oh, come on. It didn't feel like I did. The movie did run on forever, though.
Alright. We have 4 this time. Which is apparently more than next week will be, so that's good.
Who knows? We might get something. You never know.
We're going to go ahead and start with Noah. Keeping up with the religious thing we've had like 3 weeks in a row now.
Thankfully, we get a break now, because there's not a... No.
Oh, now we're going patriotic next week.
Having this for reals in a couple of weeks.
Alright. So there was... At the beginning, they were talking about the fact that apparently Aronofsky made the movie, and then the studio started interfering.
Mm-hmm.
Or they started interfering during shooting, I don't know. But there was a question of exactly how much of the religious factor was in it.
Mm-hmm.
The first 5 minutes of the movie is the retelling of like the first half of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like the text comes on screen, and then there's somebody narrating, and then we see it play out. Like first there was Adam and Eve, and then there was Cain and Abel, and then Cain killed Abel, and then there was Seth, and then there was Noah. And we see that through artsy visuals that look like scenes from Samsara or something.
Yeah, big time.
That's okay. This movie was weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out exactly where I should start. Obviously, the story is God's gonna bring a whole bunch of water and destroy the world.
Mm-hmm.
And Noah's is like the prophet. So he gathers up his family and he says he's going to destroy the world, and a giant forest appears because they can't make an ark appear. They got to make the forest appear so he can make the damn thing himself. So that's what he does, and he builds the ark, and they get all the animals on it. But it's not that simple anymore, apparently.
No.
Because we're in modern times. And in modern times, no matter what story you're telling, whether it be Snow White, or Alice in Wonderland, or fucking Noah's Ark, you gotta have a battle in it.
Yep.
A big-ass, gigantic centerpiece of just dudes battling for whatever contrived reason the movie throws at you. And then he gets on the ark and the water comes.
Yes.
So, the story of Noah that most people are familiar with is like about 45 minutes of this 2-hour and 20-minute movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that was off-putting. We have giant rock monsters out of The Hobbit, who basically do his battling for him. You have, I guess they thought they didn't have enough to work with story-wise. For some reason, this movie has a villain in it. Because you have, obviously you have Noah and the descendants of Seth and all that. Apparently you still have descendants of Cain or whatever, and they're led by Ray Winstone, and he's got a whole army. And basically there's this subplot where he basically wants to kill Noah so he can have the ark so he and all his buddies don't die. I don't remember any of this from the last time I heard this story, but
No.
basically what they said, what the studio said, and I guess what Aronofsky said, since he's apparently a writer on it too, and a producer as well as the director. If we're gonna make Noah, we gotta make it this huge epic, but I don't know how to make a story like this into a 2.5-hour movie, so let's just throw all kinds of shit into it to make it long, just because. So that's what they did. And they threw in a bunch of really, really uninteresting side characters, like Emma Watson and Logan Lerman. He's got a wife that's Jennifer Connelly. And they have other kids. And there's a love story. There are a couple of love stories. Just because.
Yeah.
And these characters, you know what? Logan Lerman, Emma Watson, Jennifer Connelly, and the others. And throw in Ray Winstone as well. I can't even remember these characters' names.
Mm-mm.
And we got out of the movie 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I've got nothing. I really just... So, that's the kind of movie you're dealing with. Just so you know. And Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins being wasted yet again. People are really, really all over wasting Anthony Hopkins' talent lately.
Yeah.
He's basically kind of somewhat playing Odin again.
Kinda?
Kinda.
Kinda? Really?
Okay. It's aesthetically good looking.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part. But the problem is, towards, it's got a really good look, and like you brought up, it's kind of Terrence Malick shots.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, since it's Aronofsky, not so much the Aronofsky that brought us like The Wrestler and Black Swan, but the Aronofsky that made The Fountain is really shining through here.
Big time.
And I'm not a fan of The Fountain at all.
I am not either.
It's got a big following though, so whatever. There's this one particular shot that really struck me, but unfortunately it kind of pointed the movie in the direction that it was going. There's this really great shot when Noah first learns that he's never God, he's the creator, is going to destroy the world. So he sits up in his tent, and then he runs outside, and we get this big Lawrence of Arabia shot. And it's the ground and him in silhouette, and the background is this really great shot of the sky, and it's like half blue and half orange. And I was like, man, that's a really awesome shot. It looks like a painting or something. But then, much like the rest of the movie, it gets really redundant. We get that same shot like 5 times, just with different things in silhouette. And that's when I realized, and it was proven true as it went on, the redundancy of this movie is really what kills it. Noah has the vision that he's going to destroy the Earth like 3 or 4 times, and it's the same goddamn vision, no pun intended. And, this movie wears thin really, really fast.
Yep.
Unfortunately. And like I said, that's long before the arc even comes into this. But then again, to their credit, they did call the movie Noah and not Noah's Ark, so...
Yeah.
I guess. And they actually make Noah an interesting character. The interesting character. And it helps that you have a great actor like Russell Crowe.
I'm warming up to him.
Because Noah's got so many different things going on with his character here. Because, he's the hard-working father at one point, and then he's, the sympathetic, too much was laid on his shoulders guy. You have there's a point in time where he's got a tender side to him, because they take the girl that grows into Emma Watson, they find injured, and they basically take her in, and there's a scene where he's laying with her, and she's saying, "My dad used to sing to me," and stuff like that, so she asks if he'll sing to her, and of course he does. And it's a nice moment, despite the fact that I was suppressing laughter, because she looked at Russell Crowe and said, "Will you sing to me?" And I just expected him to scream right in her face, 24601.
That would have been awesome, by the way.
But no, he's it wasn't his rock star voice he used in Les Mis, it was... And it brought a nice other side to his character. Then we get towards the end, where he's kind of also a villain.
Yeah.
I don't know. I suppose you could say it's pretty uneven, but a character with that many personalities is really interesting amongst these very who gives a fuck characters.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder what personality Noah's going to have in the next scene. I'm actually interested to find out, because I don't give a fuck what Logan Lerman or Emma Watson's doing. Oh, and also, he can be pretty vicious, because I also refer to a scene in the middle where the battle's about to happen, and Ray Winstone and all his dudes are coming, and they're basically this wall that's just charging through the woods.
Yes.
And Logan Lerman's with this girl he's falling in love with. How sweet. Well, this girl gets caught in a trap. Gets her ankle caught in a trap, and he's trying to rescue her, but he's only making it worse.
Yeah.
And then Noah appears, and he's like, "Father, help me!" So Noah comes over. He tries to get her out once, and then he gets up, and he grabs Logan Lerman and pushes him, and then they both run off, and we get to see as Logan Lerman looks back and says, "No!" And the girl is viciously trampled to death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at this point that I should probably bring up that this movie's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it is.
I was pretty surprised, because there were a lot of people in there, and I was trying to figure out, are they the people that are looking for, like, whatever this movie actually is, or are they looking for the religious movie? I couldn't tell. Nobody walked out except for one guy at the very end that I think was tired of all the endings. And
There was actually 2 people that could never find a seat that bombed out midway through the movie.
Well, this movie is actually, like, violent and bloody at times.
At times.
And, I was a little surprised. Like, I don't know if that's gonna... I mean, obviously, some of the story is pretty brutal. Like, you know, it starts with mentioning that everybody knows that Cain beat Abel to death with a rock.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's that kind of violence pretty much throughout. So, like I said, there's this whole big battle scene just because that's what you do now. I will say, though, there is, Jennifer Connelly does get one good scene towards the end, where she gets to have, like, a big emotional moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine. She's reminding the world that she's an Oscar-winning actress, because she hasn't done that in years since she won it, I think.
Yeah.
So, that's more or less how I feel about Noah. It's a chore, to me anyway.
Yeah.
Apparently it's getting decent reviews, but, I don't care for it. Aronofsky is like...
Hit or miss.
Yeah, he's got... I didn't really care for Pi, and Requiem for a Dream is what it is.
Yeah.
And you have The Fountain, which I don't care for. You have The Wrestler, which I love.
Yes.
Then you have Black Swan, which is extremely overrated, and now you have this. I can't remember if I missed one.
I don't think so.
There seems to be a big gap between Requiem and The Fountain, but I think that might be it. If I forgot one, apparently it's not worth remembering. So, yeah, it's definitely... It's like if Aronofsky took elements of The Fountain and tried to make... Well, it's not exactly, but just in tone, I guess, a Lord of the Rings movie.
Kind of.
So, yeah. There's a whole lot of, like... You said you were hearing things about people complaining it wasn't, like, historically accurate.
Mm.
Whatever that means when you're talking about the Bible, can be controversial. I'm just saying, this movie has a lot of fantasy in it.
Yeah. Say the least.
You know, like, water turning into entire forests, and, you know...
Ginormous rock monsters.
The rock monsters. I still don't get the rock monsters that threw me off.
But no one was walking out because of it, and I didn't hear any murmuring in the background, so maybe they checked their inhibitions at the door.
Yeah, this would have been one of those movies that I think I would have been excited to see, like, in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
When movies like this were, like,
The
a
norm.
big deal.
Yeah.
When the Lord of the Rings movies were happening.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't care for this.
No.
So,
I don't know about its target audience liking it either, honestly. I can't tell.
I don't know.
I will say right now that I went on record saying that I think that Noah will be a financial disaster before I saw the movie, basically because they put so much money into it. That CG's got to cost a pretty penny.
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about that.
Because it's everywhere.
I was worried going in because of the news obviously bringing out the fact that Aronofsky was not using real animals at all. And that worried me because I complain a lot about CG and how a lot of the times when you're using a lot of it in one movie, it normally doesn't look very good.
No.
So, It didn't look bad. I mean, it's really obvious that everything's fake, but apparently, number one, it was a promise to Russell Crowe that he wouldn't have to work with real wild animals, and secondly, something about authenticity of animals wouldn't necessarily look like they do now than they did whenever this was.
Like that weird wolf armadillo type creature towards the beginning.
Yeah. So, yeah, it looks fine.
Yeah.
The effects seem to get better as the movie progresses, oddly enough. But everything else, the script is really bad too.
Yeah, big time.
So, you know, Emma Watson and Logan Lerman are generally well-respected young actors. Logan Lerman's obviously great consistently, unless it's a Percy Jackson movie. This isn't necessarily her fault, and I guess it's nothing against her personally, but I'm just kind of really sick of Emma Watson at the moment. I'm sick of hearing about her, and I'm sick of seeing her. She's never... People, you know, go on and on about how amazing of an actress she is. I have yet to really see that, in my opinion.
For me, it would be Perks.
So, Deathly Hallows Part 1 gets brought up a lot when I talk about how great she is, but I don't... And as much as I love Perks of Being a Wallflower, it was one of the best movies of 2012.
Easily.
But I don't know, I just don't... I have yet to... And The Bling Ring. The Bling Ring is probably when I liked her best.
Yeah, I really liked her in The Bling Ring.
But that was a whole different thing. Because she was doing basically the whole teen satire thing. But... You know,
Russell Crowe actually got me to laugh almost out loud in this movie.
On purpose?
I don't know. I don't think it was intentional, but it was just his delivery. I don't remember exactly the line. It was towards the end of the movie, and he pretty much said something like, "I will not be stopped." And for some reason, just his delivery made me laugh. I don't know why. I wasn't supposed to laugh, I know that, but it just kind of like made me laugh a little bit. So
there's that. Okay.
But that wasn't fun.
I guess we can go now.
Yes.
The next movie is one I was really excited for. Maybe a little foolishly. Our next movie is Sabotage.
Yes.
Which is Schwarzenegger's new movie.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when either Schwarzenegger or Stallone do a new movie, I get really excited.
Yes, you do.
Because... I don't care if their movies don't make money anymore, and I don't care if they're old as fuck. I still fucking love them and their movies.
Yes.
Especially Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger's just got that really personable personality. And his movies are awesome. Obviously, if you've watched these videos before, you know how much I fucking love The Last Stand.
Yes.
It was one of the best movies of last year, and I saw over 300 movies last year.
It's true.
That movie was just the perfect action movie. And of course, like I said, I kind of got ahead of myself and I was saying, oh man, The Last Stand was one of the 10 best movies of last year. Surely Sabotage is going to be amazing. Sabotage is okay.
Yeah.
Sabotage is more on par with Escape Plan.
I would say so, yeah.
Which means it's alright. It's fine, and it's going to be better than most people say it is. I think it's already doing badly with critics.
It gave me kind of like an Expendables vibe in places, too.
Basically what Sabotage is it took me like the first 45 minutes to even figure this out, but because I didn't watch the trailers, but basically Schwarzenegger and his crew he's in the DEA. Mm-hmm. And he's got a whole crew with him, and they're going they're basically raiding this drug cartel. And there is $10 million of money within this raid. So they go in, and their plan is to steal it. So basically, they do this really elaborate thing. It was hard to tell what the fuck was happening in the scene. I couldn't tell if that was intentional or not. So I was trying to give the movie the benefit of the doubt and say, well, I'm confused as fuck right now, but maybe it'll just play out and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Basically their plan is to hide the money and then they'll come back for it later.
Yeah.
But of course when they come back for it, it's gone. But they get pulled in for questioning anyway, and all of them are suspects, but then the case just kind of drifts away. And then they reconvene, and they get the team back together, and then the team starts getting picked off. Mm-hmm. Gruesomely. Yeah. Obviously, because you're dealing with cartels. So, and the plot goes from there. And they have to figure out who's trying to pick them off. So, yeah, it's alright. First question I had to ask myself going in was, are we or are we not going to hear the Beastie Boys at some point?
Yeah.
The answer to that is no, by the way. So, alright. Let's start with Schwarzenegger. The interesting thing about this is, as I was talking about, the thing about Schwarzenegger is, even though he's considered this hardcore action hero that will kill the fuck out of you, no matter what the scenario.
Yeah.
All his characters have a likability about them, most of them.
Yeah.
Unless he's playing the original Terminator or something. This is a much darker character than I think we've ever seen him play before.
Completely.
He's basically, and this is difficult because I don't really know. It's really hard to tell when I'm in spoiler territory just trying to explain things. Basically, he's a very vendetta-driven character, mm-hmm. and that's his thing. And this, I will say, this movie's not very shockingly, looking at like the poster and probably advertisements. It's not that much of an action movie.
No.
Per se. It's an action movie by genre, but it's one of those movies where the action is sparse, but when the action's there, it's very present.
Definitely.
It's just this movie's like an hour 50, and there's maybe 3 big action scenes, and that's it. Every now and then there's like a brief shootout, but I counted, I think, 3 actual action scenes, including the opening. So, it just depends on what you're there for. But despite the fact that the action isn't always there, this movie's still surprisingly really, really gruesome.
Oh, yeah.
Because when the characters are picked off, they're not just like casually picked off. They're like mutilated by trains, or they're gutted, or they're nailed to the ceiling, and yeah, it was, I mean, not that that's a problem, because, you know, it's a hardcore movie. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. It's just probably hardcore in a different way than you're imagining. Because when I was thinking, because I knew how hard this movie was going to be going, I imagined just a bunch of like The Last Stand. The action in The Last Stand is like almost constant without being redundant.
Yeah.
And like every scene actually called for. I'm not saying, you know, just do action just to do action, because like those movies that are mindless where they just say, it's like they're saying, well, we haven't had an action scene for about 10 minutes, let's do one now, just because. Like in The Last Stand, all the action scenes had like a reason they were happening, because the plot that movie had made the movie move nonstop. And this is more of a like investigation movie.
Yeah.
They bring in this character that's Olivia Williams that is a detective, and it basically turns into one of those movies. But so that's basically what you get with Sabotage. The cast is a long list.
Yeah, it is.
Besides Schwarzenegger and Olivia Williams, who's actually good. She's a great actress, and she's, you know, good in this.
She's a good character in the movie, too.
The first person that's worth noting is somebody I didn't recognize right away.
Yeah.
Especially, okay. I'm sorry for saying this.
He's second credited, too. That's the funny thing.
I don't mean to insult the guy or anything. I think the fact that he's so good in this movie is why I didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
Because he's not a guy that got famous for his acting talent.
No.
I'm talking about Sam Worthington, who is bald and has, like, a weird goatee beard thing. I didn't recognize him for, like, the first 20 minutes. And he's probably one of the best characters in the movie.
I agree.
He kind of also got to show off his acting talent. There was a surfing movie from a couple of years ago called Drift that he was in, if you want to check that out. The movie's okay, but he's good on it. He really shows off the badass thing that was missing in, say, Avatar or...
Man on a Ledge.
Yeah, that was the other one. And it's also worth noting, of course, it was only a matter of time before he and Schwarzenegger did a movie together because Terminator Salvation.
Mm-hmm.
But while being this badass character, he's also the funniest character in the movie.
Yeah.
Which I found surprising. You have Joe I always freeze up before I say his name. Joe Manganiello, I think is how you say it.
Yes.
Who is the other really hardcore... That guy, he's fucking massive.
Yeah, he is.
I never really realized that until now, but and David Ayer, the director, was talking about him a lot in interviews about how he's really going to be... If he... I mean, obviously he's got True Blood, but if he really wants to, go into, starring in action movies, he could totally pull it off. You have Terrence Howard,
Yes.
who doesn't really get to do much for a while. He's just kind of there.
But he's important.
Yeah, he gets to do his thing, but for a while there I was thinking, he's the only person in this movie that's been nominated for an Oscar, and he's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
But he gets more to do later. I guess we'll talk about, I had to do my thing where I have to go to YouTube to figure out how somebody's name is pronounced so I don't fuck it up. So I go find a video of them saying their own name.
So hard to find that sometimes.
Mireille Enos, I think is how you say it, is this character, probably the most psychotic character in the movie. She's basically the one that goes undercover when they have to, and basically infiltrates and does her thing. And she's basically a drugged up slut that also happens to be on the side of the law, but the line is very blurred with her because she's just this completely psycho character. I was reading a few... Malin Hackman was actually supposed to be in the part, and that would have been really interesting.
Yes.
Malin is how you say her name, but I can't.
Yeah, I know you can't.
I don't know. She's famous for The Killing, that TV show that keeps getting canceled and renewed. And she was Brolin's wife in Gangster Squad. She's been in a few things that I've already forgotten. But...
She reminds me of Jessica Chastain. That's who I was thinking of during the movie.
That would have been awesome too.
Yes.
But I don't know how I feel about her as an actress or this character. The problem with the character is she's supposed to be this really wild, out of control scene stealer. Her character's really just kind of annoying a little bit. So that kind of brought it down a little bit. Josh Holloway, who I did not recognize until the credits, is one of the guys. He's barely in it. He's got 2 scenes. He's got the opening scene, and then he's got 1 scene where they're all hanging out. I had no idea it was him.
Yeah.
He also is bald like Sam Worthington. I guess that was the thing for this movie. See, Martin Donovan was in there as basically, he's a great actor, but he's basically the powers that be. Troy Garrity, who I love, who's also in Gangster Squad, also doesn't really have much to do here. He's basically the cop that knows what's going on, but he's, I don't know, I wish he'd had more to do. I wish he'd get more work, period. There's so many people in this movie, I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Something that was kind of weird in the middle of the movie is, I was talking about, you have Schwarzenegger and you have the detective played by Olivia Williams. They kind of start to do a love story thing with them a little bit. Not a whole thing, but just kind of somewhat there. That seemed really out of place and unnecessary, and it was weird while it was happening.
Yeah.
There's even, when we're introduced to where this story is going, there's really nothing between them whatsoever here, really, except that we get this superhero origin story for him that Sam Worthington tells her. And then he gets pissed off because, oh, she can't know my origin story. Nobody can know my origin story because I'm, made of steel. So, anyway, she learns his origin story. I guess that's why they're attracted to each other now, I guess. So she's in her pool skinny dipping.
Yeah.
And then she swims up to the wall, and she sees a bottle of wine in a glass, and she looks up, and he's just standing there, staring at her. And she actually says the line, well, this isn't creepy or anything. That whole segment was just weird, and I don't know why it was in there. But I will say, despite all this, like I said, the action scenes that are there are good. There's a nice big chase scene at the end.
Yes.
And then there's, just when you think it's over, there's one more action scene. That brings us to, I'd say, it'll probably get hated, but I'd say it's a fairly satisfactory ending.
Yeah, definitely.
It brings it to the right conclusion. The conclusion you're probably looking for.
Oh, yeah.
I also did think it was kind of funny that when Olivia Williams first goes to his house and she's looking over his stuff, just to show you how successful Schwarzenegger has been in his life, she's looking it over and you can see like young pictures of him. You see him like with Clinton and you see him like in the army and stuff like that. And then she says, so it looks like you're something of a big deal. Almost 150% sure those are all real pictures of Schwarzenegger.
I'm almost guaranteeing it.
That really exists. So, yeah, that's basically the movie calling out, by the way, our star is a pretty big deal. I don't know if you knew that. It's worth noting the director is David Ayer, who did, he's the writer of Training Day and SWAT.
Yeah.
He wrote and directed Harsh Times. He did direct End of Watch. And he's doing the World War II movie Fury at the end of the year. So, that comes out at the end of the year with Brad Pitt. And he's I generally like him. He's kind of, I think I like him better as a sole writer than a writer-director. And this, it is kind of obvious that this is the writer of SWAT. Obviously, SWAT isn't this, bloody and hardcore, and SWAT has a lot more action in it. But the structure felt a lot like SWAT's. Like you have the opening where everything goes wrong, and then obviously they get pulled off their job. And then they go back into training. There's a whole bunch of training sequences. And then they go back into action. That's basically the exact setup of SWAT.
Yeah.
The structure of it. And yeah, David Ayer's all about doing the cop movies. I think Fury is actually his first movie that is not completely devoted to just cops being cops. So, it's okay. Like I said, it's going to get horribly bashed. But it's not that bad. It might not be what you're expecting to, depending on what you're expecting. So I just thought it was okay. I think I just had my hopes too high was my problem. Or another problem could be is it's actually terrible and I'm just trying to give it the benefit of the doubt and like it as much as I can. I don't know. I guess.
I didn't have an issue with it. I've seen worse this year for sure. I've seen worse action movies this year.
Our third movie got a limited release last week, I think. So I'm playing catch up now. Our next movie is Blood Ties, which stars Clive Owen and Billy Crudup as brothers. It's worth noting here that the co-writer and executive producer of this movie is James Gray. And James Gray did We Own the Night. This movie is kind of basically somewhat the same thing.
Interesting.
Clive Owen is a criminal, like a lifelong criminal, and Billy Crudup is the good brother who's always wanted to be a cop, and is a cop, and they clash because of this.
Who's Eva Mendes in this movie?
No, Mila Kunis. I drew a blank for a second. Yes, Mila Kunis would be the Eva Mendes of this movie if we're comparing to We Own the Night. Except for the fact that I'm pretty sure Eva Mendes did more in We Own the Night than Mila Kunis does here.
No heart of glass?
Yeah. The reason they, no sexy scenes with Mila Kunis, sorry. It's really funny. If you go to the Parents Guide, obviously the Parents Guide you edit yourself. Like, people go in and they put, how much sex in it, how much violence is in it, how much language is in it.
Yeah.
By the way, it is pretty violent, and there's, the language is, nonstop. Obviously, the person that edited the Parents Guide was a pissed off Mila Kunis fan. Because, like I said, there's a lot of violence in it. Violence was blank. The profanity is absolutely nonstop. There's nothing under language. Under sex and nudity. None, with an exclamation point. And that's all that's in the Parents Guide. Wow. So, anyway, it's set in 1974, which basically means it's trying to kind of be in that, that Serpico era of 70s crime movies. It's kind of trying to have the same feel as that. And there's a whole... this whole movie is kind of a complicated web of characters, so let me try to go through this. Billy Crudup has just put away a criminal. It's that guy from Bullhead and Rust and Bone, and I wrote down the pronunciation of his name here. Okay. Matthias Schoenaerts is how he said it, I think. Okay. So, he gets put in prison because Crudup arrests him. And then his wife, the prisoner's wife, is Zoe Saldana. But Billy Crudup is in love with Zoe Saldana. So after he's put away this criminal, he's basically going to romance the criminal's wife. And then, on the other side of things, we have Clive Owen, who is married, or was married to Marion Cotillard. But now he's basically... they're separated, and he's with Mila Kunis, who he works with. Before he quits in a very dramatic fashion. And of course they have, we meet their other family members we have a sister who is Lily Taylor, and their dad, Robert Duvall, who is James Caan. Like I said, this very complicated web of characters make up this one story. And it's not bad. It's not bad at all, actually. The big complaint was the director of this movie, who is Marion Cotillard's, boyfriend. They say companion, I think that's what they say now. And this is his first English language movie. That's what I was saying about, James Gray made The Immigrant this year, and this guy made Blood Ties. And obviously James Gray worked on, as a co-writer and executive producer, and Marion Cotillard's in both movies. It actually feels like it should be switched. This actually, The Immigrant feels like it would be made by somebody making their first English language movie, and Blood Ties feels like something James Gray made. And it's also, it clearly has high expectations of being this crime movie, because there is a scene where when Clive Owen is first romancing Mila Kunis, he takes her out to dinner, and when they go out to dinner, they are playing a different version of Then He Kissed Me. You might remember this scene in Goodfellas. So as soon as that scene happened, I was like, wow, you got some big aspirations there. But yeah, I think it does, and a lot of people complain, I didn't finish that thought, sorry. A lot of people complained because they think it's very, very conventional, and they thought the movie was really predictable. Yeah, you could say that, but it's not like an outrage or anything. I think the problem is it being from a director that normally does foreign language movies. Foreign language movies, generally, the good ones, are known for being about as unconventional as you can get, compared to American movies. I think that's why they're throwing so much of a hissy fit. If this exact movie had been in a foreign language, and maybe they maybe some more main characters died. It might be more acclaimed than it is, but I think it's just kind of being brushed off as a been there, done that kind of movie. But I thought it did that 70s crime movie thing rather well, and I think it's got a good tone, and like it sticks to it, and it's fine. It does feel like it moves a little fast. It goes a little over 2 hours, so it's weird that I say that, but it's like a lot of the scenes feel like they just kind of abruptly kind of cut off in the middle of them, and that's a little off-putting. And they'll be like, there's a crucial scene in the movie that I won't say because it's an obvious spoiler, but there's a crucial jump in time that takes place in this movie that seemed really, there really seemed to be shit missing in there. I think this actually could have been, like I said, I feel weird saying this because I'm always saying to cut movies down, but I think if done the right way, this could have at least been a 2.5 hour movie, or 2:15 at least. But as far as performances go, Clive Owen is great. Clive Owen basically plays this. He's a pretty unpredictable character. To give it credit, there's this one particular scene that really stands out. Like obviously, the movie begins with Clive Owen being released from prison, and he goes to see his kids, and you see him like giving his daughter presents and dancing and acting goofy with her and all that. Then the next scene, he's telling Marion Cotillard to shut her fucking mouth and like threatening to hit her and grabbing her and stuff like that. Granted, Marion Cotillard does play an extremely scummy character in this movie. So it's one of those, you can't really tell what side he's on as far as whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. But then there is one scene where he goes into a bar and he shoots the place up. And he goes into the back, and this was like, I wish I could have seen my own face, because it was like, wow, that was fucking cruel, but also really awesome. After he shot the bar up, he goes into the back, and there's this kid there. By kid, I mean maybe 16 years old or something, just like a kid working in the bar in the back. And he points the gun at him, and of course the kid freezes, like he knows this is it. And he's like a really young guy, so you kind of expect maybe Clive Owen's gonna have a change of heart. And we've seen him with his daughter and stuff like that, so we know he does kind of have a soft side to him if he finds it in the right time. So he goes and he starts to kind of bring the gun down. And just as the kid gets hope that he's about to live, he brings the gun back up and kills him. That scene was like shockingly cruel, but effective at the same time. The subplot with the relationship with Mila Kunis is, I don't know. It's one of those things where it really didn't need to be there. It causes drama in some scenes, but I think it was mainly one of those, a director's trying to do his first English language feature. Maybe we should put a really big, popular name in it. Because apparently Clive Owen doesn't do that enough. So you just drop Mila Kunis in it, I guess, to get as much of a audience, I guess. I don't know, this was never going to be some mainstream movie anyway, I don't know. Maybe she wanted to be in it and she auditioned or something. I don't really know, but... yeah, it's fun. Billy Crudup is also really good in it, mainly also because he's an extremely underrated actor. And Sean Arts is really good because he actually has to do an American accent, which is very interesting, and he does it flawlessly. So it's interesting to watch him. He's not in it very much, but when he's there, he makes the most of it, and he's really effective and chilling in a way. There's one hilarious scene with Griffin Dunne in it. When he and Clive Owen and his friend are basically trying to kind of come off as good guys, so they go to start basically this snack shack, but it falls through immediately. And Griffin Dunne basically plays the guy that has to tell them that it's going to fall through and they can't do it. That's a really funny scene amidst this very dramatic, heavy movie. Oh, it basically pulls a Contraband, by the way. By that I mean the movie Contraband with Mark Wahlberg that came out at the beginning of 2012 was a foreign movie, and the guy that remade it and directed it as Contraband was the star of the original movie, and not the director. The director of this movie was the star of a French movie. Yeah, a French movie that this is a remake of. So, and it was called Rivals. Yeah, I had to think for a second. One more thing I want to bring up that really makes this movie rise above, what would be seen as a conventional crime movie or a messy whatever. The performance of James Caan as their dad. Usually he could be considered, this character, could be considered like he has to bring them together and he has to do the dramatic scenes and, the conventional stuff. Mm-hmm. But the way Caan plays this character is very, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's the best performance he's given for a long time, which says something because he's been a great actor since the 70s at least, the early 70s. I can't think of anything pre-Godfather off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's something. So yeah, that's pretty much Blood Ties. It's perfectly fine. It's going to be better than you probably hear it was. That's going to be a comment a lot, apparently. Yeah. So yeah, if you can find it, it's fine. If you're not really expecting a lot, it's perfectly fine for a 70s homage crime movie. Mm. Our last movie, we did good, okay, or we did bad, okay, and now we're back to bad. Mm. Our last movie already hit theaters in January. It comes out on DVD April 1st, I believe. Which is just in a few days. This movie is called Knights of Badassdom. And it's basically one of those film festival movies that got a big following because it's basically a fanboy movie. I was really worried when I started it, because just by looking at the poster and knowing the type of movie that it was, I was afraid it was basically another John Dies at the end.
Sounds like Tim and Eric a little bit, too.
God, don't even say their names around me, please.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, and once again, if you saw earlier videos, you know how I feel about John Dies at the end. It is kind of somewhat the same kind of sense of humor mixed with gore thing, but this is not near as bad as that. Basically, Bryan Quanten, who is also, I think it's True Blood. I get all the vampire shows mixed up now. I'm pretty sure it's True Blood. And he's also really popular in Australia, I think. He breaks up with his girlfriend, and because he's this massive nerd, basically. So he goes home, and you see all his swords and knights and dragons and all that shit. And his friends come over to cheer him up, and his friends are Steve Zahn and Peter Dinklage, who are even bigger nerds than he is. So much so that they are obsessed with what's known as live-action role-playing, or LARPing. So, they decide they're going to cheer him up by bringing him to this big LARPing event, where a whole bunch of them have come together, and it's going to be this big thing where they're camping out and all this. But the thing is Steve Zahn and Peter Dinklage are so into it that for reasons of authenticity, they've brought real weapons with them. While everybody else has foam weapons. So, that's not going to come in handy later. So, Steve Zahn has this book. And basically what happens is they're basically playing the game. Oh, and it's also worth noting that the guy's girlfriend is Beth. And he has a picture of her. So what happens is Steve Zahn is reading this book, but what he's actually doing is he is bringing about a succubus from hell. And he's unleashing it. And of course, because the guy was in the middle of the circle while this was happening, the succubus is in the form of Beth. And wreaks havoc on all the larpers. You get to see a whole bunch of larpers get their intestine ripped out. And their heads pulled off. And their backs ripped open. And their jaws ripped off. And all that. And there's this real problem with a shift in tone, because this is another one of those movies where it goes from comedy, stupid comedy, to horror movie with extreme gore.
Mm.
And halfway through the movie, I really wasn't sure what was supposed to be funny anymore, mainly because I wasn't laughing in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, here's the thing I was thinking, because I couldn't tell at first. When the first couple of deaths happen and people start to realize what's going on, I couldn't tell if they were still... Steve Zahn finally makes the announcement, we're out of game, or whatever the fuck the term is. And there's a running joke where they have a guy with them that, it's the love interest brother or whatever, who constantly thinks he's in the game. And they keep making this running joke about how he was banned from medieval times for an incident that we don't know about. But anyway, when they make this shift and the people start to realize there's real problems going on and people aren't just faking dead now, I couldn't tell if we were supposed to be taking it seriously or not.
It's like Club Dread.
Yeah, I was getting a Club Dread vibe, yes.
Yeah.
But what Club Dread did was, no matter how hated it is, was consistently funny, even while people were dying. But some of the deaths, I think, are supposed to possibly be taken seriously, but I couldn't tell. What I was thinking throughout the movie, like I said, I'm not, necessarily saying I'm better than the people that wrote this. But would it not have been an interesting... The movie is a one-joke idea anyway. Why not just run with it? Would it not have been kind of funny if the whole concept of the movie was that everybody was dying for real, but nobody came out of the game? Like, everybody was just... They just kept going like it was still part of the game, and that was what the whole movie was. Even though people, like, are missing their jaws or have their intestine on the ground or whatever, or decapitated. They just kept playing like it was still the role playing. But no, I think it just kind of somewhat gets serious after that. Obviously, they realize the problem's really happening, and they fight the succubus and so on. The best thing about the movie by far is Peter Dinklage. Steve Zahn gets to do his thing too. Like, Steve Zahn has some great deliveries. Steve Zahn can deliver one word like nobody else. Like, if there's, like... I can't remember any... just... I don't know. There's just a few scenes where all Steve Zahn has to say is, like, one word, and his delivery is just perfect, and those can be funny. But the only consistently funny character is Peter Dinklage, who, gets so into it that he basically takes shrooms before every event. So he can really, really get into character. And really, really get immersed in it. The movie needed more of him. Mm. He's only in about half of it. So that was a problem. And he's got this this line. He's got the only really funny line in the movie. He's getting ready to confront the succubus. And he sees it standing there. So he starts to charge at it, and he whips out his sword, and he says, in his great Peter Dinklage voice, "Fuck you and the mustache you wrote it on." But, sadly, he's not in it very much. So, Of course, they barely put the best character in it. Did I mention he's also an executive producer on it?
No.
Oh.
You told me, but video.
So, I just don't... And it was basically... They basically put it over as it was picking up the ball that Your Highness dropped. It's better than Your Highness, yeah, I'll say that. I can think of plenty of really shitty movies that it's better than, but there's a lot of movies that it's not better than. There's also a funny joke about the announcer. There's this unseen guy that's announcing everything that happens. He's really funny also. And not directly, but I will just say this. The ending is a ripoff of The Pick of Destiny. That was kind of distracting. So, no, this is another one of those movies I just really didn't care for, but I imagine it'll have a following. So, I don't know. If you want to check it out, if that's your thing, it'll be one of those movies that has some fanboy following, I'm sure. So, whatever. I can see like the Bubba Hotep crowd and all of them liking it. Yeah. Those movies that go to film festivals and will probably have like midnight screenings in the future, shit like that. So, and the awareness that the people that made the movie probably knew they were making a movie like that. The cast actually did real LARPing sessions in preparation, and naturally I read that Peter Dinklage was supposedly the best of all of them, which is kind of ridiculous because, of course, Peter Dinklage would be the best at live action role playing because he's one of the main stars of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much used to that. I'm pretty sure live action role playing is pretty much just what happens on the set of Game of Thrones. It's just cameras are rolling and there's special effects added. So, yeah. If his character had been the main character, that would have been great. Probably. So, like at the beginning, he's talking about his mace, which is, that weapon where it's like a spike ball on the end of like a metal rod, and it gets bent. Dude, you bent my mace. And then just sadly, my mom made me this mace. But no, the main character is this whiny guy whose girlfriend broke up with him and so on. Even Steve Zahn just kind of disappears and reappears, and I don't know. This movie just didn't work for me. So
we're pretty much split this week, it seems like.
Pretty much.
So, you would have mild recommendation for Sabotage?
Yeah, a little bit. And yeah, I do recommend Blood Ties. I just think it's
going to be hard to find.
Yeah, that and, I think it's more of like the movie buff crowd that'll complain that it's too conventional and stuff like that. And I think any other person will... It's perfectly fine. I wouldn't worry about it.
Obviously, we're good on that then. No recommendation for Noah?
Not really.
Do you see a crowd that's going to like it?
I don't know. I couldn't even tell what our crowd was thinking.
I couldn't either.
So, that's it for this.
Next week, we have a very short, as of this moment, it looks like going to be Captain America, the Winter Soldier, finally coming out. Our superhero movie year starts, and we'll be like pretty much relenting for the rest of the year.
Caesar Chavez will be next week as well.
Yep, and we may have some other stuff coming up in the future. Who knows? So, any parting words?
That's it.